Hey guys, what's happening? So we're back with more Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099, where for this one, in the 100th Legacy issue, we get a look at some of Miguel's rigorous training, as well as the second appearance of the Werewolf by Night of 2099, who happens to have more in common with Spider-Man than he's aware of at the moment. So with that said, let's get into it. But first, if you're enjoying these videos, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so coming back, right away we're introduced to the Werewolf by Night of Earth 2099, Creighton Russoff, who's currently on the outer districts of Nova Atlantia, stealing a sample of Biosium for cobalt chemicals. And without much context being given, all we're really shown at first is that he has an arrangement with them, where they get him to do sketchy work, and in return, Cobalt Chemicals provides Russoff with the medicine that he needs to survive. But we'll talk about more of Russoff's backstory in a little bit, because next when we head over to Miguel O'Hara, we find him in the middle of his training, which is pretty much a simulation where he fights multiple Spider-Men, because the way he sees it, to be the best, you gotta go up against the best. And I would even go as far as to say that for Miguel O'Hara, training is more important for him versus most of the other Spider-Men, since he doesn't have your traditional spider sense, and he has to rely on his other heightened senses, as well as his modest telepathic ability. But to do this training, we find out all he did was just make his way to the local holo gym. And since everyone loves Spider-Man and wants to be him, it allows Miguel to just hide in plain sight, while Lila, his digital assistant, makes sure that no one hacks his Apple Vision Pro. But speaking of training, I can't help but to wonder what this person is training for, since apparently we got people at the holo gym hiding in plain sight. But right here, Lila pulls Miguel out of his workout to let him know that Cobalt Chemicals is in the middle of a standoff with Atlantean soldiers who claim that Cobalt's been raiding their mines. So Miguel rushes over there to check it out, and the first thing he notices is that these Atlanteans are shooting to kill. So before trying to figure out who's right or who's wrong, Miguel just swings in to stop these guys, because they're packing these high-pressured water guns that are powerful enough to cut someone in half. And for a moment, Russoff sees one of the Atlanteans getting ready to shoot Spider-Man. So Russoff goes to stop him, but right away his transformation kicks in. But with how this happens so fast, with Russoff pushing this guy during his transformation, we're shown one of the Atlanteans with their head sunk into the wall, and it's kind of like, man, this guy had no idea this was how his day was gonna end, let alone his life. But in this very moment, the attention of everyone in the room is shifted over towards Russoff, who just now transformed into a werewolf and started tearing these Atlanteans to pieces. Though at the same time, he's telling them that they shouldn't have come here, and not because Cobalt Chemicals is innocent by any stretch of the imagination, but instead it's because he didn't want to have to tear through these guys. So Miguel calls him out on this, like, you know, didn't you people rob them in the first place? Because Cobalt struck first, so these Atlanteans, they're not wrong. But in response, Russoff just tells Spider-Man to stay out of it, and he insinuates that it's too long of a story to get into, by telling Spider-Man to back off and how this is just a private matter, though he knows that all of this looks bad. But in the middle of what Russoff is saying, a voice comes over the radio telling him a roundup team's en route for the Atlanteans, engage the Spider. So Russoff responds, telling this person from Cobalt Chemicals that Spider-Man saved his life, only for them to tell him, "We save your life, Russoff, every day. Engage Spider-Man unless you're tired of living." So Russoff responds, "Copy that." And the next thing we see is Miguel flying out the window, which right away this is something that Miguel recognizes as an act of mercy, because he knows that encounter with the Wolfman could have went a lot worse. But now with what he's seen, he knows that something strange is going on at Cobalt Chemicals, so going forward he's got to check it out. But first, when we go back to Cobalt Chemicals, we see Russoff getting his treatment, and as the company would describe, Russoff's situation is not his fault, it's not their fault. But as Cobalt Chemicals would tell it, Russoff's family curse manifested. He lost control and slaughtered his co-workers, only to then get himself poisoned with silver, and that's when Cobalt Chemicals came through with a suppressant that's keeping him alive. So because he was a Cobalt employee, and still is, they tell him he needs to keep his mouth shut and just do his job. And going forward, they're moving off of deep sea metals to focus on Spider-Man, so they can harvest and study his DNA. But just as a bit of extra information on Creighton Russoff, he's the 2099 descendant of Jacob Russoff, the original Werewolf by Night, who later legally changed his name to Jack Russell, but even still the family name and curse made its way back around to Creighton. But not long after Creighton gets his treatment from Cobalt Chemicals, we pick up with him at the Skyrise District, where it's clear that he's well aware of Cobalt chemicals using him. And it's put him in a state of intense frustration, because it's one thing for him to be dealing with this family curse, but on top of that, with him dealing with the blackmail from Cobalt chemicals, he sees it like, sure, they're keeping him alive, but what's the point if he doesn't have any choice on how he gets to live that life? But while he's here yelling at himself and his whole situation, a web hits his window, followed by a foot that comes flying through, which of course is none other than Miguel O'Hara, who's figured out that Cobalt's sending their Wolfman after him. So with learning this, Miguel was just like, how about I go see this guy first, rather than getting caught off guard. But on top of that, Miguel knows that Russoff doesn't want to kill him. He doesn't even want to fight him, because after all, just earlier he saved his life. And in a way, Miguel sees Russoff's situation as relatable, because he also knows what it's like to be used by a company, because in his case, some time ago, that was Alchemax. And though that comparison doesn't make these guys exactly the same, to take it a step further, Miguel points out the difference between the two of them, with that being the fact of Russoff being obedient to his company. But again, with the way that Russoff sees it, Cobalt Chemicals is keeping him alive. So when they tell him to hunt, this dog hunts. And he just tackles Miguel, sending the two of them out the window. So Miguel tries to shoot a web, or at least get free enough so he can glide to a better position, but Russoff just bites the web, so the two of them come crashing down on a diner. But even after that hard fall, Miguel just shakes it off and he lays into this guy, while at the same time letting Russoff know that he doesn't have to just do whatever Cobalt says. But again, because Russoff is poisoned with silver, he believes that he really doesn't have any other choice, because without his treatment, he'd be dead within hours, days at most. And for a moment here, Russoff just starts choking Spider-Man out of frustration, because he's trying to explain to him how he's in a no-win situation. And for a moment, Russoff tells him, you want to take on Cobalt, you can't even handle me. And then he quickly realizes that Spider-Man is smiling under that mask, because as it turns out, he's already started his fight with Cobalt. Because right now, he's got Lila working on the inside, raiding Cobalt's servers, taking a look at some of their restricted files, and teleporting the remaining Atlanteans back home, along with a number of the rare metals that Cobalt Industries stole from them. And as we see this, Miguel's explaining to Russoff what's going on in the background and how he's trying to help him. But to Russoff, he only sees this as a death sentence. And he's just like, well, now Cobalt's definitely gonna cut me off my meds, which to him wouldn't have happened if Spider-Man didn't go snooping behind his back. So Russoff goes to punch Spider-Man as Spider-Man just catches his fist, which right there is almost like reconfirming that Miguel's been playing with him this whole time. But it's here where Lila shows up, and she lets Russoff know that not only did she send back the things that Cobalt had him steal, but also she took a look into his confidential file, and she found some secrets that are probably gonna make him angrier. Because the story about him blacking out and killing his co-workers, that was all a lie. And the truth is, he was injured on the job while working for Cobalt as a mining tech when the new Abyssmian strike hit Site 1573, which at the time was an underground work site. And as it turns out, Russoff should have been dead like the rest of his team, but it was this bloodbath that triggered his lycanthropy. And when he first turned, he was trying to protect his team, until eventually he was apprehended by Cobalt security, who used silver lancelets to subdue him. And for Russoff, it blows his mind actually seeing the truth. Because not only is the truth that he was trying to protect his co-workers, but also once again, Cobalt was in the wrong. Because the Abyssmians were just trying to protect their history from a mega corporation who just wanted to swoop in and rob their people. And to make things worse, the evidence paints a clear picture showing that Cobalt even went as far as to kill Russoff's co-workers just to make the story more convincing. So Miguel just lets him know that he doesn't find this the least bit surprising, because again, he's worked for a corporation, so he understands Russoff's anger. And with saying this, Miguel goes on to tell him that the treatment Cobalt's giving him, it's not healing him, it's not even a treatment, it's not therapy, it's not even a leash, as he goes on to spin a web to illustrate what he's talking about, as he tells Russoff that what they have on him is nothing but a choke chain, and the only question is, what is he gonna do with it? So Russoff answers by picking it up and breaking it, because he wants to live, but now he has to make the decision whether he wants to live long or live right. So Miguel tells him to think it over, but not to think forever, because the clock's ticking. But after having this talk and looking into Russoff's eyes, Miguel very much saw himself in this guy. And as he leaves, Lila believes that Miguel let him go. But the truth is, he just gave Russoff another target, because if he actually dies in the next hour or so, his masters are gonna die with him. And aside from that, there's also the chance that Russoff could survive. And if that happens, Miguel believes that the Werewolf by Night will follow the same path that he has after he's closed his own corporate chapter. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/DopeSpill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.